science can track these strategies, and I guess the ultimate understanding of the viruses will be to create a vaccine.
Okay, so that brings me to this story then. So here's what happened. I have never worked on coronaviruses. I've worked on HIV, I've worked on flu, Pichinde, Coxsackie, measles, VSV. I've worked on a bunch of other viruses. And for about 20 years, I worked on HIV and HIV vaccines. I actually have a patent on a technology for an HIV vaccine. So anyway, so when this virus broke, I started looking at the papers that were coming out, and then I started looking at the vaccine strategies that were being developed by countries around the world, by companies, by research institutions. And for 4 years, I served as a reviewer for Dr. Fauci's institute at the NIAID on HIV vaccines, okay? And my job as a reviewer was to critique grant applications from scientists around the country that were working on HIV and to decide which grant applications were better than others. So you have to develop, as a scientist, you have to be super critical, and you have to be able to poke holes in things, and you have to be skeptical and so forth. Anyway, so I pulled up the list of vaccine ideas that were being developed for this virus. And I was able to poke holes in every single one of the strategies. And then I thought, that's not good. That's not good, because if I can poke holes like that, and I'm a pretty good expert in the vaccine world, then we need some new ideas. And so I came up with a new idea. I couldn't poke holes in it. So I said, okay, it looked good. I worked with a colleague at Wadsworth Center at the New York State Department of Health. I came up with a new protein, a new vaccine protein. And I had a colleague in New York look at the molecular structure of it, because I wanted the molecule to have certain characteristics. So she did a little fine tuning of the molecule. And then I have great colleagues, great collaborators all over the country. And so one of my other collaborators, who's at the University of Washington, and she also has an appointment at the Primate Center, the National Primate Center in Washington and Seattle. So I called her up and I said, I made this molecule and I think it's a go for a vaccine for this virus. And she looked at it and she said, I love your molecule. And I said, me too. And so it's something that's not being studied. It's a brand new molecule I created. And so she said to me, let's test it. And I said, I'm game. I'm totally game. Let's test it. So we tested it in mice. I started working on this at the end of March, and we got data on Friday night. This Friday, we got data on Friday night, 10 o'clock, because it was 7 o'clock her time. And my vaccine is inducing antibodies in mice. And it's inducing a really strong response in mice. And now we're going to test and see if the antibodies are neutralizing. And then we're going to put it into monkeys. And we are going to have a lead candidate by the end of the summer. So what's happening in Washington is I designed my molecule. Okay, so here's how this works. I designed this molecule so that it could be manufactured using existing technology, okay? There is no point in creating something that you can't manufacture and make millions of doses. That would be useless. So I brought, I did this in 3 days, and I was telling one of my sisters who's not a scientist, and she goes, 3 days? I go, but it's 3 days with 30 years of experience, right? It's not 3 days, it's 3 days and 30 years.
It's not 3 days in a vacuum.
Yeah, right. So the molecule was designed with the idea that it would be manufactured with existing technology and you could ramp up for those hundreds of millions of doses that you need. Okay, so it's a protein molecule, and my colleague in Seattle, she studies nucleic acid vaccines. So she turned my protein into a DNA molecule to do a quick experiment to see if it had potential. And when she sent me the results on Friday, I was so excited. It was so exciting. It was so exciting. So yeah, it has potential. I have another Zoom meeting this afternoon with her to talk about next steps. So so she's tested it as a DNA vaccine. She's also going to test it as an RNA vaccine, but I wanted to test it as a protein vaccine. And the reason we're testing it across the 3 vaccine platforms is because if you look at the list of vaccine candidates out there that are being tested, Moderna is testing an RNA vaccine. But anyway, so right now we're out there in terms of this virus, they're testing RNA vaccines, DNA vaccines, protein vaccines. Now, protein vaccines are in common use, okay? The flu vaccine, Flublok, Flucelvax, these are protein vaccines. There are no DNA or RNA vaccines that are in commercial use in people, okay? Nucleic acid vaccines work well in animals, but they don't seem to translate well into people.
Okay.
So what we're going to do in Seattle is, and we're going to run this, we're going to run the test. So we're going to combine a DNA vaccine, a DNA version of my vaccine with a protein version, and we're going to test that. But at the same time, we need to do a protein vaccine only, like do a protein immunization with a protein boost. And I think that's the one that's going to make it into people. I think that's the one that's going to be the best. But we're going to test them to see. We're going to see, and we're going to test them in monkeys to see. So right now, my colleagues, so when you think about testing vaccines and doing animal work in monkeys, it's very expensive. So she has been able to get funding from the National Institutes of Health to do her nucleic acid vaccines and to test them in monkeys and mice and so forth. But because I have been pushing hard for her to do the protein version of the vaccine, her grant doesn't cover the protein piece. So I helped her write a small grant for private donations for $20,000 to have this protein made, because we really have to have it made. I also tried, we're still working on that fundraising idea. It's basically private donors donating to the University of Washington, targeting her lab. So they're working on that, and we hope to raise those funds to get that protein made. So let's see, so where are we now? So we're getting the protein made. I tried another strategy. The 2 companies that would be able to manufacture this protein in terms of doses are Sanofi and Seqirus. And so I really worked my network hard to get Sanofi interested. I mean, one of my colleagues was the president of Sanofi. He recently retired. Another colleague was the vice president of research at Sanofi. I talked to him. I have another friend who contacted the chief scientific officer, but we haven't made any progress with getting Sanofi on board. They're testing their own vaccine. They're testing a protein version of the spike protein, and I don't think that's going to work either. But anyway, that's another story. So the other company then that I'm going to try and see if we can get some kind of partnership with is a company called Seqirus. And right now at the University of Washington, I'm talking to my colleague about, I turned the invention over to the University of Washington because I'm going to have to form a company, like a limited liability company, because I was doing all of this as a private individual. So I'm gonna have to set up an LLC and get stuff. I'm terrible at that kind of stuff. But anyway, so University of Washington is going to file the patent application on the invention. I gave the invention to them. I just turned it over to them. I, you know, whatever. We're in a pandemic. We can't be fighting about who owns what.